Greetings YouTube and welcome to Bubble Hearthing. Today we're going to be talking about the red cards from Theros Beyond Death. Currently the set is actually already live at MTG Arena. I filmed this one and the other one's a little further apart than I wanted to. So took a little break and we're back. So without further ado, I think we just hop into the red and see how it's performing. Red was doing okay in the last set, mainly just seen in Fire's decks, so we'll see if they have a little more utility going on now. So the first off, we have Anax Hardened in the Forge. It is the red demigod, 3 mana for a star, I don't know, star symbol, 3. And let's see, where the power is your equal to devotion to red, so it comes down just bare bones as a 3 mana 2/3, which is very boring, especially in red. What else do we do? Whenever that or another non-token creature dies, create a 1/1 red satyr token with a can't block, and if the creature had power 4 or greater, instead you make 2 of those. At first glance, I thought this card was pretty bad, because what are you really going to do with it in red? It's just going to kind of hang around. It seems like more of a card that wants to like stick around a bit. It makes little 1/1s, but it costs 3. It's not really great on rate there. But then the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, well, if you play this in a Cavalcade deck, which is one of the higher up, one of the faster, I should say, mono red decks. So let's say you play like a Scorcher in turn 1, maybe a Tin Street Dodger or 2 on turn 2, and then turn 3 you drop this thing. Okay, so that way you would have 5 loyalty. Maybe just play Cavalcade in turn 2. 4 or 5 loyalty, so it'd be at least a 4/3, maybe a 5/3. Not too shabby there. And it still has the ability there, which means that you don't really get to run out too much of thing to trigger your Cavalcade, because it makes 1/1s instead. So, say you have, I don't know, your Scampering Scorcher swings in there because you needed to get that light off the stage to go off for 1 mana. You need to get that Spectacle. Your opponent blocks it favorably because they have like a 2/3 because they're playing whatever. You get to keep a 1/1 on the board to trigger light up the stage, not light up the stage, Cavalcade again. I think this card's actually pretty nice. I could see people potentially trading off 1 or 2 spots that would have Torbrand in there instead for Anax going like 1/1. Sorry, excuse me there, my throat's a little scratchy, gonna hydrate. You know, the red is really burning me up. Yeah, this is a professional quality stream. Anyway, so I feel like you would see maybe 1 of these, maybe 2. This could see like a little more sideboard play. If your opponent is playing a lot of board wipes and such, you can use this to try to rebuild afterwards and still have, if you have Cavalcade down, still hit for like twice as much as you normally would. I don't think the creature having 4 or greater to make 2 tokens is really going to be relevant. The only time that really comes into play is with the Steamkin, if it gets buffed enough, or if you kill, or if you lose, say, your Chandra's Phoenix, Chandra's Spitfire, whatever it's called, after it's already get buffed a few times, so most likely like a Murderous Rider effect. So that's really the only time I think the extra thing's gonna go off. Of course, if he just dies when he has 4 more power, then that works too. Still pretty good. I don't think it's gonna go in like a regular mono red deck. There's mono red, then there's Cavalcade red, and currently mono red's being overshadowed by Rakdos Knights, but that was before the expansion. So we'll see how it goes, but I think this is one to definitely keep an eye on. If you open it, throw it in there, see how it goes. Alright, next up we have Arena Trickster. It is a 4 mana 3/3 with whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Arena Trickster. I think this is one of the better cards that cares about playing spells during your opponent's turn, because a few of the other ones, granted, Breaching Hippocamp is pretty good because it draws you a card. Still not a huge fan of it though, but it's good. Other ones just give you little temporary buffs. This one stays around, which means you can actually use this also as a combat trick to a degree. So you have this thing on the board, so your opponent swings with a few things, you block with this guy, you block a 3/3 with the 3/3, you use a kill spell on their other creature that's getting through, now your 3/3's a 4/4, you killed their one thing with the spell, you killed this guy with the token, and you're fantastic, right? So, again, ideal scenario. Obviously, Constructed is going to be 0 out of 5, not going to see any playability there, but in Limited, if you have enough kill spells, if you have enough things to play during your opponent's turn, I don't see why not. If you don't have anything, not even any of those flash auras, which we're going to come up to in a second, then just find something that's better. Find a better slot there. But if you're running like maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 things that are instant speed, I can see you running this in a limited deck and not really feeling too bad. Okay, I told you I told you we would see them very soon. There we go. Words, I can do them. We have a 3 mana Aspect of the Manticore. It is a flash aura. Whenever it enters the battlefield, enchanted creature gains first strike another turn, and then until the end of time, or until the Manticore tentacle thing is removed, it gets +2/+0. So it's a nice combination of first strike and then +2/+0. So you largely use this as like a quick little kill thing. And of course, toughness doesn't really matter, but the fact that it only gets first strike for the turn that it hits the board is very, very lackluster. And it costs 3 mana. I can see this costing 2 mana and not being too bad, although at that point then you could play it as like a 2 mana deal 2 in combat, because you can just use it, you know, whatever gets through the face. So, Limited is going to see 0, sorry, and Construction is going to see 0 play, even though it costs half as much, and half as much is a relative thing, as soon as you hear what I'm going to say, as Embercleave. I know, Embercleave doesn't really cost 6. It still gets outclassed by the fact that it gets a little buff, and it gets double strike, and it gets trample. This is competing with that in a strange way, and it's just not going to work. In Limited, though, this is like a pseudo-removal spell. More often than not, your creature is going to survive the altercation there, the interaction, so I think that's not terrible. The only issue is that, is it really worth 3 mana? I feel like if you didn't have any other removal, you could throw this in there as like a 4th or 5th removal spell. Otherwise, I actually wouldn't really mess with it. It plays well with the Arena Trickster, because when you play it during your opponent's turn, it goes to a 4-4, then the 4-4 goes to a 6-4 with first strike, probably kills whatever you're bumping into. So, you got that. If you have enough synergies like that, go ahead. Otherwise, if you got Perforos, sure, work on your devotion. Otherwise, I'd kind of leave it to the side. Alright, we have a 2 mana 1/1 in Blood Aspirant. It's a Satyr Berserker. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Blood Aspirant. Okay, so it's supposed to be a little bigger, I guess. And you can pay 2 and tap it, and sacrifice a creature or enchantment. That's a lot of things to do. You pay mana, you tap the creature, you sack something else. It deals 1 damage to target creature. That creature can't block this turn. So we've seen this effect in other things where, you know, you prevent other things from blocking. They never really cost that much, though. And sure, it buffs itself that way, but it's also tapping itself. If it didn't tap itself, I'd say this is pretty good. And sure, if it's during your opponent's turn, you can block and then use the ability, and it still gets buffed and it still deals combat damage. But then what are you doing with that can't block this turn? Like, then the ability is completely useless. You're just literally sacking a creature to put a counter on your thing. I guess you can deal 1 damage, so it could pick off something, but no. I do not like this card at all. If you have, like, constant token generation or something, if you have a reliable way to get things back from the graveyard, something with a super cheap escape cost, who knows, then maybe you could use this and try to buff it up. But still, a 1/1 takes a while to really get going. You know, okay, play 1/1, next turn is going to be a 2/2, 3/3, meanwhile your opponent just drops like a 4/6, like, okay, well, I gotta wait like 5 more turns until I get over that. Not so great. Obviously constructed 0, limited, maybe if you just really need like 1 card. If this is your last card, I throw it in there. If this isn't your last card, I don't know, maybe run a land instead. Okay, we have a 2 mana 2/1 Careless Celebrant. She just doesn't have a care in the world. Look at that. Alright, it's a Satyr Shaman. When Careless Celebrant dies, it deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. An opponent controls. Yeah, that's what I said, right? Cool. Yeah, 100%. On point. Okay. So let's see now. In Constructed, it's going to see 0 play, but only because it can't go face. If this could go face, it would actually probably see some playability, because it's just damage that sticks on the board that is somewhat reliable. People were still running that that goblin where you can like pay 1 or 2 and sack it and deal 2 damage or something. So that largely outclasses this. But if this had a similar ability, I see some play there. Now, what does it do with this? So a planeswalker or a creature. The fact that it's either one means that this is definitely limited playable. 100%. You probably want to run maybe 2, maybe 3 of these. Try not to get blown out by things that deal 1 damage, like this guy. Oh no, it feels bad. But even when it does get picked off, that doesn't really matter how it dies, so it will definitely take something down with it, or at least it should if you're playing it at the right time. So yeah, definitely great limited card. Your standard red, like, kind of 2 for 1, you know, you block favorably, hopefully, and then you take something down. Or even if you block this into a 4/4 and take something down bigger, and you take a bigger thing down, it's still 1 for 1, but your 2 mana thing traded with, like, their 3 or 4 mana thing, I see nothing wrong with that. Yeah, love it. Next, we have a 6 mana Dream Shaper Shaman. I was going to say Dream Spear, because it's holding a spear, but it's Dream Shaper. What do we have? An enchantment creature at a 5/4. At the beginning of your end step, so, okay, the same turn it comes down, I like that. You may pay 3 mana and sacrifice a non-land permanent. Well, the fact that it says may is nice, but 3 is a lot. That means that you can only do this the same turn if you have 9 mana up. Okay, continuing. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land permanent card. Okay. I see where we're going there, but I don't really like it. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now that's... The fact that it puts it on the battlefield is nice. It's like a sneaky little polymorph, tinker, whatever you want to call it. In fact, I don't know, show and tell, whatever it is. But this has to survive a turn. This The issue I see here is that the benefit to running things like Mass Polymorph back in the day, or whatever kind of polymorph, or Tinker, you know, to a point there, is that you pay less mana to get this huge thing out there. What do we have that's huge in red right now? Not a whole lot, really. Like, there's some, you're sure, you go ahead and search the red and you find the biggest thing there, and you'll find something that's pretty much half decent. But you're paying 6 mana to get something else out that hopefully costs more than 6 mana. That would also mean these have to be your only cards. So if you're running more of these, there's a pretty good chance they're just going to run into another Dreamshaper Shaman. And sure, you can try again next turn, but if you just spent 3 mana to do nothing, because you had to pay for the ability, that feels really bad. And if you're waiting till you have 9 mana to do it and proc it in the same turn, god damn, just play the big thing. Just play like Thrill Possibility and Tormenting Voice or whatever. Just play a whole lot of card draw. Thrill Possibility, that's a red thing, right? Yeah, totally. Yeah, just play the whatever red card draw you have there and try to find it instead of this guy cheating it out somewhere. In Constructed 0, unless there's one card that particularly just blows everything out of the water. I don't think so, but we'll see. In Limited, it's really not great, but I mean, a 6 mana 5/4 enchantment creature isn't really too bad on rate right there, so I guess you're just throwing that in there, but don't count on using the effect anytime soon. Plus, especially in Limited, you're going to have a lot of little, like, you know, smaller creatures. You're not really going to make a big red in a Limited format, so just be aware of that. Next up, Dreamstalker Manticore, 3 mana 4/2, enchantment creature, pretty nice. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, it deals 1 damage to any target. You know, that's not bad. 3 mana for a 4/2 enchantment creature is pretty solid. That's not bad. It's aggressively statted, and it's in red, so it makes sense. And I'm very, very bright, by the way. Reflection. Okay, I'm going to try to lean more on this side to avoid the light, because the light burns. I'm a vampire. It hurts physically. And emotionally, too. Anyway. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, you deal 1 damage. I don't mind that at all. I mean, obviously it only works once per turn, but let's see. The fact that it deals to any target, so it could just be, you could do that after combat, of course, provided this thing survives, and then, you know, whatever survives with 1 toughness on your opponent's side of the board, just, and ping, that goes away. And ping this, or if you just happen to have a few cards that are better during your opponent's turn, ping your face. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see this seeing any constructed play again. In Limited, it's slightly better than other things. I don't see any reason not to play that. Hopefully you have some instants and stuff to buff it up. Even if you don't, though, a 3 mana 4/2 isn't, you know, is far from the worst you could do. So I definitely see this seeing some play in Limited. Don't feel too bad if it winds up in your deck, but it's probably going to be okay. We have the 1 mana. Oh, that guy's got a hell of a beard. Okay. As I lean in and like, yes, and mine glows with the might of the sun. Okay, sorry. I should have said that for the Heliod review. 1 mana enchantment aura. And it gets +1/+0 and has haste. And the big thing here is that you can escape for 2, exile 2 of the cards, so pretty cheap. I really like these auras that have escape on them, because it kind of mitigates the fact that you're playing this card and you can get 2 for 1 if they kill your creature. I can just bring it back now. It's in the graveyard. Not a big deal. So you don't really lose as much of the card value when your thing dies, which is also nice because it has haste, so you can kind of use it as a little sneaky thing. Before this, it was maximize velocity, and that saw some play in Drake stacks for a little while, just to haste out a big old, what should I call it, Snapping Drake? Not Snapping Drake, oh, Jesus Christ. You know, the big old 2 red, 2 blue Drake that would be super obnoxious and get buffed like to high hell, and then it's like, okay, I play it, and now it has haste, and now you're kind of dead. But it quickly fell off very quickly. They stopped running that. I also really like the fact that it's called Escape Velocity, and it has Escape, and it's just it fits very well. In Limited, sure. In Standard, I don't really think it's going to see too much play at all, even though it is a nice thing there. Unless you really need that enchantment recursion, and even then, what are the odds this thing always dies? You could try to put this into a deck where the enchantment comes back, and then you can sacrifice things, and you sacrifice triggers, and then the enchantments again, and Constellation. But that's really contrived. If you're trying to do something like that, just run Jund. I mean, of course, it's old, so who knows how things are going to shape up now. Shape up, whatever. But Jund is the cornerstone thing of sacrifice, trigger, deal damage, recur things. So you're competing with that if you want to try to make that kind of deck. But by all means, do your thing. This doesn't have haste. It doesn't have flash, which is interesting. I don't know if they would have something with flash and escape, though. That'd be a really weird card. I'd like to see that. That'd be kind of cool. Well, of course, you can do that with the card later on. Let's get there. It's going to take a while. It starts with a U, but we'll get there. Okay, now, Fateful End is for a 3 mana instant. It deals 3 damage to any target. Scry 1. Yeah, in Limited, this is fine. It's limited removal. Scry 1 is decent. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, you would usually want to do 2 mana, deal 3 damage. That's the standard for like Lightning Strike, and Wizard's Lightning is 3, but it can get reduced to 1. Still, the standard is 2 mana, deal 3 damage. So attacking on the Scry 1 for 1 is a little expensive, just for the fact that you're scrying 1. If it was like Scry 2, okay, I can see that. Let's see. In standard 0 playability, there's still better cards to run. I mean, Slaying Fire itself is just like really good. Granted, I think they cost what, 4 mana? No, 3 mana, deal 4 damage. Yeah, so yeah, you would just do that. I gotta cover up that window because I am like blinding people, I swear to God. But yeah, unlimited, it's fine. It's decent removal. Final Flare. This is a very different art style because it's from an artist. Who would knew? Alright, who would knew? I don't know. I knew the whole time I knew. Alright, 3 mana instant as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment. And it deals 5 damage to target creature. So, not great. You're inviting yourself for a 2-for-1 there. Hopefully, you do kill the creature that you're dealing damage to. And if this could deal damage to the face, I would say it's pretty good. And might even see some play in Constructed. Just because dealing 5 damage for 3 is a pretty good rate. And you could just kind of throw that in there at the very end of aggressive turn. Swinging everything, instant. Oh, this is going to get blocked? I'm just going to deal 5 damage to your face then instead. But the fact that it's only a creature means it's basically just unlimited, and if you really need a last, like, removal spell, sure, I guess, but I don't really think this is where you want to go. This is going to feel really bad when you have to use it, especially when you're at, like, somewhat of a stalled board state. Sure, you can use your little guy to potentially sack it and kill their big guy, but you're still 2-for-1ing yourself, and that feels bad. Ah, Flummoxed Cyclops, yes, Flummox. It's interesting, it looks like the eyeball kind of closes, like, sideways instead of up and down, so, that's a thing. But anyway, 4 mana, 4/4. The Cyclops has reach, I guess just because it's like super tall. As you see, it's just gigantic there with his bone club. Boomstorm. Sorry, Hearthstone reference. What? We don't acknowledge that game anymore. Whenever 2 or more creatures your opponents control attack, Flummox Cyclops can't block this combat. And that is where we get the flavor win, folks. So it only has 1 eye, right? Cyclops. Whenever 2 more things attack, I don't know. I can't do it. I don't know. I'm just gonna stand here with a big club and be like, whatever. So, flavor-wise, fantastic. Why it has reach, I don't really know, because it really only matters on blocking, so I guess if they attack with 1 thing in the air, I guess, like, yeah, I can swing up here too, but if they attack with 2 things, this guy can't block at all. So, doesn't feel too great. Obviously, standard... lit standard, sorry, I'm just saying things incorrectly. Obviously in Constructed 0 play, and in Limited it's not terrible for just a 4 mana 4/4. Just don't really play it for the reach. So I'm like, yes, I have an answer to flyers because you have an answer to 1 flyer at a time. You don't have an answer to a flyer and a little dude or whatever else. They can very easily use this effect to their advantage. So but if you just want a 4 mana 4/4, knock yourself out. Furious Rise, a 3-mana enchantment at the beginning of your end step. Okay, so it happens the same turn, I like that. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, don't really like that part, but we'll see. Exile the top card of your library, you may play that card until you exile another card with Furious Rise. So, I guess what's worth noting in that thing is that if you lose the creature with power 4 or greater, and you don't get the trigger to go off the next turn, you can still play the first card you exiled. Or the only card you exiled, I guess. The last one? The last card you exiled. That's wording. So, this just strikes me as one of those Theater of Horrors kind of things. I believe that's what it was called. Which saw a little bit of play, where at the beginning of the turn you would exile a card, and then if your opponent dealt damage, you can play the cards from exile. That was pretty nice. That saw very, very slight play, and then quickly just kind of faded away. I don't think this is going to do any better. Especially because it doesn't even reliably hit it. I mean, in standard 0 playability, you would rather just play like a Chandra, even though she costs 1 more mana. She has the fact that she's probably going to deal damage to your opponent. She demands an answer, and you still get to play the card of the turn. Whereas, this card is just not really pushing it for me. Nope. I'm going to say don't play this in standard, don't play this in limited. Don't open this card. Don't do it. If you open the card, I'm sorry, but you messed up. Ask for another pack. Demand more packs. That always works. Okay. We have a 5-mana 4/4 Heroes of the Revel. There's some satyrs, cool. When it enters the battlefield, you make a little 1/1 satyr token that can't block. So it's kind of like a 5-mana 5/5 spread up. But since it can't block, it's only on the offense. Although the 4/4 here can block, so let's see. Whenever you cast a spell that targets this card, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Okay, so that's not too bad. The question is, obviously this isn't going to see any play in standard, so how many cards do you have in limited that are going to work on this? Obviously, auras. all the auras are going to work because, I mean, obviously not the ones that kill your creatures. There are negative auras, you don't want to play that. But there's a few things. I think in Limited this isn't really too bad, but the fact that it's only till the end of turn and it gives you a little 1/1 guy doesn't really do a whole lot. I'm not really sold on the idea. I think if this is like your high-end card, I'd rather have something else that's higher on that end. This is just kind of not really getting there for me. So, no, I'd rather have another big blowout card. Hopefully you get some better rares or mythic. If you get a mythic, then, you know, you can just win the game, right? But hopefully you find some of the things on the high end of the mana scale. I don't know. that can help you win the game. Let's see, a 3 mana, 3/2 Hero of the Games. Whenever you cast a spell that targets this. So same effect as the other card. As this thing, except it doesn't make a little token and the stats are a little lower. So I like this a little bit more just because it isn't as much of a mana investment. You're not going to spend, 5 mana to make a 4/4 and a 1/1 that can't block. Again, standard 0 play, but in Limited, this is slightly easier to play. Even though it's the rate here isn't that great because it's a 3 mana 3/2 as opposed to at least a 3 mana 3/3. It's still playable. So I would rather have this thing and try to get those shenanigans to buff your other creatures than try to get the satyrs to go through. Also worth noting that this could, since this only costs 3, in the same turn you could play this on 5, you can maybe play this guy, and then throw in like a 2 mana enchantment or some 2 mana do something, and buff all your creatures the same turn. It's much more reliable that way. Instead of just, you play that and you have to wait a whole turn to even potentially get some benefit off the effect. So this card's better. If this was like a 1 out of 5, this is like a 2, maybe a 2 out of 5 is fine. Impending Doom. I don't know why this isn't a black card, but sure. Just because the name sounds so good and they're like, look what they did. They printed it on red. Anyway, a 3 mana aura. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and attacks each combat if able. So like a berserker kind of effect. And when enchanted creature dies, it deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. So, geez, this is a hell of a thing. I really don't think you're going to be putting this in your opponent's creature anytime soon. There is the potential, like, yeah, I do that, I kill your creature, and you take 3 damage. Whoa! But 3 mana for an enchantment that does +3/+3 is significant. And since we all know health is a resource, that 3 damage doesn't really matter too much when it's your face, right? When it's your opponent's face, then it matters. When it's your face, it's fine. You're going to live forever. You're only 18, right? Anywho, I'm old. But let's see, +3/+3. The big downside here, obviously, is attacks each combat if able. So your opponent knows it's coming. They can try to set up blocks favorably. If your opponent has any sort of death touch, and there's a few little death touch creatures hanging around there, then you're going to feel pretty bad throwing this on something, and then it's like, okay, you spent 3 mana to take 3 damage, and your creature died now. So you feel really bad. This can very easily go go poorly for you. So, obviously the impending doom is like, hey, guess what? You should have called this, like, I don't know, dangerous gamble or something. I don't know exactly what it is. But reckless gamble, maybe? But I know there's already a card called gamble that doesn't actually do anything related to that, so maybe wording-wise that's wrong. But, I think I could play this. I would play like maybe one of them in a deck just to see how it goes, and after round 1, maybe side it out immediately if my opponent had enough easy ways to kill it. So yeah, obviously standard 0 play, modern 0 play, constructed 0 play. We have a 2 mana 2/2 incendiary oracle. Oracle? Okay, not Oracle. Oracle. I don't even know what an Oracle is. Anyway, you can pay 2 mana, and it gets +1/+0 to end of turn. So 2 mana fire breathing, that's fine. A 2 mana 2/2 is fine. If a creature dealt damage by this would die this turn, exile it instead. That's nice. That's actually not bad at all. You can kind of use this as a mana sink later on in the game, and the fact that it exiles things is relevant because escape and such. The odds of this actually hitting a creature that can escape are pretty low, but it might make your opponent think twice about, like, attacking with, that one little escape thingy that's like, well, I don't really want to get exiled because they get a lot of value from that, so maybe I'm going to hold it back this turn. So it's going to kind of hold things back, as well as just being able to buff itself, and then, you trade up very, very easily. So yeah, totally. Like a 3 out of 5 or something in Limited. Standard 0 play, but that's okay. Let's see, is there anything else? No, I mean, if you gave this any sort of ability where it could, like, deal damage to things outside of combat, then that would also exile creatures, but that's probably not going to happen. Okay, we have a 1 mana Infuriate. Target creature gets +3/+2 at instant speed until the end of turn. So this is literally just red got a giant growth that doesn't give 1 toughness. That kind of cheaped out on that one. Which I guess is fine, because red and green are different colors, and giant growth is better for green and red. I don't know. But This is fine. Like, in limited, this is not bad at all. The fact that it buffs toughness, I'd rather have it be +2, +3 in that sense, but it's not very red in that way. So flavor-wise, you have to kind of buff the power more. But yeah, this is a fine little 1-minute combat trick. Still, you know, kind of 1-for-1s if you go up, if you trade up that way. Probably 2-for-1s because you're going to run to something that probably has a little more and you can still take your creature down afterwards. But yeah, and if you're just using this to push through lethal, there's nothing wrong with that. I could even potentially see this having some play in Standard. Just because 1 mana deal 3, lightning bolt anyone. I know it has to, you know, punch through things, but there's the potential. I could see this as like maybe a 1 of, maybe a 2 of. Usually combat tricks don't see any play in Standard at all, but I could see someone throwing an Ember Cleave, then throwing this on top and dealing an extra 6 damage just because they can, and it not really being a bad play. So keep an eye out. Maybe one of these will make its way through. In limited though, yeah, go ahead, throw it in there. Just make sure you have enough creatures. Don't put too many non-creature things in your deck, and then expect this thing to hit. That goes for any kind of kill spell, really, any buff spell, but whatever. Alrighty. 4 mana, Iroa's Blessing? Yeah, Iroa, sure. Is an enchantment aura. You have to target a creature you control with it. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and the enchanted creature gets +1/+1. So obviously, the bigger effect here is not the buff, is the fact that you just 4 mana deal 4 damage. It is not a flash aura, therefore you have to play it during your own turn, and it's not very interesting there. The +1/+1 is largely irrelevant. It's just something that kind of makes it slightly more playable. Otherwise, it's 4 mana deal 4. The fact that it deals it to a creature or a planeswalker is actually pretty relevant there. So this is not bad. It triggers any constellations you might have. Any of those things that say whenever you target a creature you control, you know, you buff things, whatever. And then at the same time, it removes something, and it gives a little buff at the end. Yeah, I like this card. I think Unlimited, granted, whenever you do this and the target's removed, it's going to feel bad, but I don't know exactly the ruling whether or not the damage still goes through because it enters the battlefield or it goes away. I think it might fizzle immediately, which means you feel really, really bad. So make sure you can play this when it can actually land. If it doesn't get stuck on the board, you're in for a hard time. But as long as your opponent doesn't have removal up there, as long as it's going to be okay, just for the 1 turn it has to land on there, you're fine. And if the creature you enchanted dies, you don't really feel too bad. It was just a +1/+1. You got the big effect off anyway. Standard 0 play. Irreverent Revelers. A 3 mana 2/2. Alright, what do you do? When it enters the battlefield, choose one. Either destroy target artifact, or gains haste until end of turn. Which, I mean, I don't know why would you want to give it haste till after the end of turn, but whatever. So, let's see. Artifact removal. Not a whole lot of artifacts right now. I mean, we're going to go over them later on in another video, but I don't really like that ability much at all. And I guess if your opponent opens some, like, really bomb artifacts, like the spear or whatever, then I could see that mattering to a degree, but otherwise, no, I don't really think it's gonna be relevant. And the fact that it can gain haste, a 3 mana 2/2 with haste, doesn't really strike my fancy very well. So I feel like you're largely playing this because you have the option of doing one or the other. Even then, I would actually only put this in like a sideboard for limited things. I would potentially side this in games 2 or 3. Maybe if you see that your opponent's, maybe you happen to know, insider trading, who the hell knows, that your opponent has a lot of artifacts, sure, throw it in. Don't cheat. But otherwise, I wouldn't actually mess with this at all. It's not worth it. And yeah, you could have this as like, oh, it's, you know, red artifact removal in Standard. It's not really that good. Okay, we just have a plain old 5 mana 7/3 enchantment creature, Nyxborn Brute. It's a Cyclops. I guess I might as well read it. One-eyed and frightful, the Cyclops lifted a boulder and hurled it seaward from cliff's edge, shattering masts and scattering sailors. So there you go. Just a big red creature there. I mean, this is pretty good. Hopefully, you manage to find some way to have this last more than 1 turn, because 3 toughness is frighteningly easy to remove. There are a lot of ways to deal 3 damage, and there's a lot of creatures that deal 3 damage, and paying 5 mana to trade with like a 2-drop or a 3-drop, or just like one little thing. Sure, it can 1-for-1 that way, but you don't want to 1-for-1 with a 7/3. Jeez. This suffers the same issue as a Yargle. This is a giant, weird frog spirit thing. It was like super low toughness. So in Standard, yeah, fling it away. Just go ahead and throw a fling in there if you want to play that, and try to don't play this in Standard. There's no reason to play a vanilla card in Standard. In Limited, I wouldn't do it. If you had 0 high end, maybe you could make this work, but even then I wouldn't do it because it dies to the red board clear. Excuse me. Which will be coming across fairly soon. But this isn't it. Now we have Omen of the Forge, a 2-mana flash enchantment. It's the Omen for Perforos here. Every color gets their Omen, and this is reds. So, when it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. And then it has the scry thing later on. So, not really a huge fan of 2 mana deal 2. The big benefit you get from this is Devotion, and also you're playing a card during your opponent's turn. So there's that. That could be irrelevant. It is still removal though, and being able to scry later on is okay. I'd put this at like a solid, like maybe 3 out of 5 or so, for limited wise. For standard, it's not going to see any play at all. There's no reason to play this card. You would rather just play a shock and ignore the devotion part of it. And then playing 3 mana and sacking it to scry 2 is really, really bad value. So yeah, I could see this. Don't plan on scrying with it, because if you do, you're kind of wasting an entire turn. And if you are playing a slower deck that has red, then what are you doing? I guess you could, but you're trying to get some value off this guy, right? No. Okay, so there's that. Otherwise, it's solid, like, middle of the line. Half decent. If you have enough synergies, sure. If you need devotion, sure. If you're just using this as removal, find better removal. Just put a bigger creature in your deck. We have a 2-mana 1/3 enchantment creature, Oread of Mountain's Blaze. You could pay 3 and discard and draw. Not really thrilled about this thing. No, like, the fact that you can rummage is nice. I guess you can use that if you're trying to get to like some big payoff card. In constructed, it's not going to be played at all. In limited, you can put one of them in your deck and try to use it to find an answer, but hopefully, if you're going to run this, you have to have an answer in your deck. You have to have some big thing you're looking for. If your deck is just supposed to be like mid-range value cards, don't do it. If your deck is supposed to be, I'm going to go through my deck, try to stall out, and then play this one big thing that's hopefully going to snowball me to the rest of the game, then you can try to run this just to try to find the card. Otherwise, it's not going to be good value. And this thing. 5 mana 4/2, Ox of Agonis? I'm going to say Agonis. When this enters the battlefield, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. That's pretty good. Immediately reminiscent of Rick's Mighty Reveler. You play it for the madness, not the madness cost, for the spectacle cost, and then you did exactly the same thing. Discard your hand, draw 3. The big appeal to this thing, the huge appeal, the reason why it's mythic, is it has escape. And it has escape for a very, very small mana cost. The exiling thing is pretty high, but the fact that you have to discard your hand when you do it, either you discard nothing, you just draw 3 cards, and that's insane value, or you discard some things, you draw 3 cards, and now you fill your graveyard more with whatever you discarded. So it kind of feels itself that way anyway. So it makes up for the higher cost of exiling cards. And also it comes up with a +1/+1 counter, because why not? Just tack on some more stuff there. I think this card's going to see some play. Obviously, Mythic, and you have this a recurable 4/2, or actually it should be a recurable 5/3 in limited, is insane. And you draw more cards for it. Absolutely limited bomb, no questions asked. This can be your win con. If you're running this to try to find this, you're in for a good time. Now, in standard, what are we going to see here? Largely, I feel like you're going to want to have this in the graveyard already. You're not going to want to play it for 5. Even if you do, though, play it for 5. As a 5-mana 4/2 draw 3, there's nothing wrong with that at all in red. Aside from the fact that it doesn't have haste, so you're not actually doing any damage at the time, it's still just fine. I mean, people were still running Experimental Frenzy, not that one, the other one. Oh, the Jumpstart one, where your opponent could choose to either take like 3 or 4 damage, or you draw some cards. That one still saw some play, and it really hurt a lot. So this is like a similar thing to that. Similar mana cost, you draw cards, you put the damage on the board instead, which could be better in many situations. So yeah, fantastic card. I could see this being thrown away and then resurrected later on in a red, or even like a black-red deck. I think could make good use of this. So yeah, I expect to see this in standard, and obviously, like I said, limited, go crazy. Now, Phoenix of Ash, 3-mana 2/2 flying haste. I already like that. 3-mana 2/2 flyer, okay, it's kind of plain, but sure. The fact that it has haste, yes, very red, go for it. You can pay 3 and give it 2 more damage, absolutely, love that. Escape cost, this is another limited bomb for sure. You play this, the exile cost isn't even that important there. The fact that it still comes out with haste and actually escapes it a little bit stronger as a 3/3 instead of a 2/2. Fantastic. There's nothing wrong with this card at all. You will play this in every single deck that you open it in, unless you're out of red and you just rare draft it, who knows. Drafting, sealed, whatever, and if you just can't do it. But this is definitely enough reason to try to run red. In standard now, let's see here. I would rather run the Ox because I feel like it's better that way. Although, no, this is haste though. The haste is really what pushes it above. I feel like you wouldn't run both because the exile on the Ox is too much to run both of them together and have enough cards to reliably escape them. But, so this is reminiscent of like Arclight Phoenix in a sense that it's just going to come out, deal 3 damage. What's good? So I really like this card a lot. I really like it a lot. I think you could definitely see a deck in standard running like 2, maybe even 3 of these things. Granted, in multiples, it kind of slows things down, but especially in red, where you're going to play a lot of cards that filter you through your hand, draw, discard, actually discard, draw usually, and then play a whole lot of burn spells. You're going to be filling up your graveyard fairly quickly. So this will pretty much always be able to escape when you have the mana for it. Yeah, solid card there. 4 mana. Portent of Betrayal. That is a sorcery speed thing. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. Gains haste and scry 1. So this is literally act of treason for 1 mana, and you scry 1. And scry 1 is not worth 1 mana. It's worth like half a mana. So this card's pretty bad. The only reason I would ever consider running this thing is if you also had Thassa, and you were just trying to permanently take control of your opponent's card. That goes for standard and limited. Otherwise, just don't even bother. It's not... These active freezing effects are never really as good as they might seem to you. Just don't bother. Perforos, here we go. The big guy in the background. See here. So, for 5 mana, 7/6. Well, that sounds good. Indestructible, of course, because they're gods. But it's not really a creature at the time. Although, on 5 mana, it might actually have the devotion you need to when you play it that way. Other creatures you control have haste. Why couldn't he give himself haste? Why not? Was that too much? Was it too much to ask for? Alright, whatever. The good thing is, would you really want to play a 5-mana enchantment that gives all your things haste? Probably not. And that's what it's going to be some of the time. The other ability, what is that? Sneak attack, right. That actually matters. You may put a red creature card or an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So, there's a card called Sneak Attack back when that did the same thing, so that's why we call it Sneak Attack. It is a pretty strong effect. People are using that to try to get out, not Drakaseth, is it? I don't know. The big old, yeah, it is Drakaseth. The dragon that swings in, deal 4 damage to your opponent's face or whatever, and then you 3 damage with 2 other targets, or whatever the hell it is. Really, really strong card. It was popular in reanimator decks for a while, but unfortunately, the light is blinding. Unfortunately, there aren't really too many good targets for this. Now, the fact that it can bring back... And that's largely because it can only bring up red cards. However, artifact creatures. There might be some value there. I don't exactly know what artifact creatures you want to flash in there. I mean, you could use it on a Meteor Golem and then blow something up at the same time and then attack with it. Yeah, that's why you're running Meteor Golem in a red deck. But aside from that, it's still pretty solid. Don't overrate this card in limited, though. Because more often than not, it's going to be a 5-mana... Your creatures have haste. That's it. And doing that in limited is not so good. I mean, sure, once it gets to a 7/6, you're golden. You can just keep swinging with this thing and your opponent can't take too many of those hits. But don't really think you're going to make a whole lot of use of the sneak attack effect in limited either. In standard, though, this has already seen some kind of play. It's already doing some stuff. So I think it's definitely going to see something. People like to try to use this in fires so you can cheat cards out there because you already have a lot of mana that's not doing nothing in fires. So you have that, you throw a whole bunch of power on the board, swing at them all at once, and what's good, right? Alright, Perforos' intervention. He didn't invent anything, he just kind of smashed it. Alright, I guess someone else invented that and he just broke it. So it costs 1 red and an X. You choose one, create an X1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste, and you sack it at the beginning of the next end step, or it deals twice X damage to target creature or planeswalker. So the fact that it can't go face is kind of what balances it. Also worth noting that it is a sorcery speed thing. So you are not going to be able to use this to deal a bunch of damage during your opponent's turn when they attack you. You have to do it during your turn, spend all your mana, and then be like, well, I did what I did. Oh my goodness. It's like a laser. It's like if there was like the worst sniper in the world. Yeah, I got him right in the arm. Okay. Yeah, he'll never play tennis again. Well, I like tennis. Oh, there we go. I'm safe now. So, the first ability is largely just deal X damage, deal X -1, you know, some amount of that. So, and it's always going to feel bad because you already have to pay 1 before you drop into X, and then your opponent is going to be able to block with some things. Possibly you won't even be able to get through it all. So, the first thing, sure, while you can kind of race it in there and have like some kind of a ball lightning or whatever effect, it's not that great. And then the removal is fine in limited. I don't see anything wrong with that. The fact that it can target planeswalkers is pretty nice too. So I feel like this puts these in play in standard sideboards. If your opponent is playing some obnoxious planeswalkers, you just got to get through a few things, then yeah, you could do that. Largely, probably going to be used as the planeswalker damage or the creature damage for the second ability. The first one, you can do it. If you just have this card sitting around and your opponent doesn't have anything, sure, go ahead. I'm going to throw a 6/1 at you and you're going to take some damage. But it costs 7 mana to do that, so keep in mind that you're never really getting as much damage as you're paying for. And beyond that, in limited, it's still fine. You can still push through some damage that way. Largely, this is going to be removal, and having removal is never bad. Alright, we have Satyr's Cunning. A 1-mana sorcery. You create a 1/1 Satyr token and it can't block, and it has escape. You know, the fact that it can't block means that you can't use this to really break board states too much, because it's like, well, you know, usually what happens in a true stalled board state is you have all these creatures, your opponent has all these creatures, and you know that if you swing out with anything, the blocks aren't really going to be favorable on either side. They're largely just going to kill each other head on and stuff, and you kind of want to keep your stuff alive. The fact that these can't block means that it doesn't help you towards that at all. So the escape cost there, while sure, this is your token generation, and 1 mana for a 1/1 isn't good, but you can play it again, makes it slightly better. This really isn't great. I wouldn't actually play this in limited at all. I mean, maybe... I know Castle Ardenvale does see some play in standard, and it's a way to kind of beat out... whatchamacallit? Beat out control players, because it's a land. The fact that this is, you know, has the escape cost, and the exiling is only 2 cards, you can probably reliably do this around, 3 or 4 times, is good, but it's not really where you want to be. So, unfortunately, this card is going to get a big old nope from me. Gotta stay out of there. I was like, yep, and my mouth is on fire. Okay, Skophos, Maze Warden. So, what do we have here? 4 mana, 3/4. It can pay 1, and it gets +1/-1 till end of turn, so it can, you know, scale itself up or down as necessary. Actually, it only scale itself up in that sense. It can go back down later on. Whenever another creature becomes the target of an ability of a land you control named Labyrinth of Skophos, you may have Skophos Maze Warden fight that creature. So, literally, like, 11 out of 10, 20 out of 10, everything out of 5 and 10 and whatever. For flavor. Flavor-wise, this is a huge win. I think they printed this literally just to have the Minotaur and the Labyrinth, and that's cool. Unfortunately, we're going to go over this later on when we talk about colorless cards. Labyrinth of Skophos isn't a great card. And in order to play his ability, I think it has, like, you need to tap the Labyrinth +4 of the lands. You need to pay 5 mana, basically, in a sense, to do it. So, paying 5 for a fight effect, and you might not even have your creature survive. And then if you want to do it, like, if you want to adjust a few things, you need to use 1 mana for each thing you want to change on the, you need to use 1 mana each time you want to activate the Maze Warden's effect if you need that to trade favorably. This is a horrible card. Now, would I play it without that second ability? It's not terrible in that sense. So in limited, yeah, you can see some play just because it's a 4 mana 3/4, but you can buff it up a couple times if it gets through damage, and, you know, suddenly your opponent's taking 6 damage out of nowhere. Okay, not really out of nowhere, they'll see it coming. But yeah, don't play this for the Labyrinth synergy. It's never going to work for you. If it works one time, you'll be happy. You crossed off your little bingo list. Otherwise, get out of here. And more Skophos. We have a Skophos World Leader, a 5 mana 4/5. Sacrifice another creature or an enchantment, and it gets +1/+0 and gains a menace until end of turn. So this isn't bad. The fact that you can actually sacrifice an enchantment means you can sacrifice a few enchantment things, auras that might be lingering around, Omen of the Forge if you don't really want to do it too much. And the big thing here is that it gains Menace. Menace is very good at pushing through more things, trying to get unfavorable trades on your opponent, so, or favorable for you, unfavorable for them. So Menace is not to be underestimated. And standard is not strong enough at all, and having to sacrifice isn't worth it. But in limited, I could see this as being a good thing to kind of break up boards that are obnoxious, to push through a little bit more damage. Yeah, definitely. We have Stampede Rider, a 3 mana 2/3. It has Trample, and at the beginning of each combat, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn. The fact that it's till end of turn means I don't like it. That's pretty much it. At the most, so say you have a creature with 4 or greater, so it's a 3 mana 3/4. I mean, Trample, sure, but even then, I'm not a fan. So, no, it's just not, there's not enough going on here. The fact that it might be stronger isn't really appealing to me. So yeah, 0 out of whatever is not going to see, shouldn't really see any play here and there. Limited, standard, constructed, find something better. If you have to run it, it doesn't really feel too bad because, you know, a 3-mana 2/3 trample is still okay, but it's not where you want to be. Now, this card is a hell of a card. What the hell is this card? I don't know. It's a card, though. Definitely a card. I see it. I'm blurry. I'm not blurry anymore. Very good. Oh, my goodness. Do I have to, like, just scooch back a little more? I don't know. Oh, and the world is shaking in Earthquake. Okay, sorry. So we have a 3-mana, 3/2 Storm Herald with haste. Haste is good. Whenever that enters the battlefield, return any number of aura cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to creatures you control. The fact that it has haste means you can attach them to this thing. Keep in mind it has to be creatures you control, so you can't use it to get back like Deadweight or any of the other usually black negative enchantments and put them on your opponent's creatures. This is not a kill spell for 3. This is, I'm going to put some stuff, although there's the one enchantment that deals 4 damage, so could be. Let's see. Exile those auras at the beginning of your next end step. If they would leave the battlefield, exile them. So you get a big old one-shot, put a whole bunch of auras on there, go for broke kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. This synergizes very well with the red enchantment that comes in and deals 4 damage to a target creature or planeswalker. It also works decently with something like Aspect of the Manticore, where it has that just like for the one turn, it gives you first strike, and otherwise there's like a little lingering effect that goes on. This is a solid card. Don't get me wrong. This is what's going to make auras decent in Limited. In Standard, I don't know. I don't think this is going to be a 3-mana win the game card. You could try to make that happen. Maybe you play this, Underworld Breach, a bunch of things to mill things if you get it in the graveyard. Bring it back, swing in. Every aura pops on the top of this guy, and then you go nuts. Or hopefully you have other creatures too. But I think there are other decks that just explode a lot better than this guy does. He's not really as explosive as I want him to be. But Limited, hell yeah. Throw him in there. Even just a 3-mana 3/2 with haste. Nothing's wrong with that, right? That's actually pretty damn good. So with an upside that can potentially just buff your guys and, you know, there may be a large explosion is good enough. Here's the one. Here's the one that I keep talking about. The red deal 4 damage to everything. Storm's Wrath is a 4-mana sorcery. Deals 4 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. The fact that it deals 4 damage to each planeswalker is huge. It is insane. Obviously, in Limited, you're going to take this, you're going to eat it up, you're going to play however many copies you need to, just play higher end things. You're going to be very, very happy if you open this card. Not Iris in Limited. In Constructed, though, the fact that it deals damage to planeswalkers is insane. The fact that it deals damage to each creature is like a board wipe for red is very, very good. This really, we don't have this kind of effect right now, so throwing that in there means you could potentially have a big red deck. Big red was already kind of a thing, but now that we have a red board wipe, essentially, it's really, really more of a thing. It's really being pushed, and I like where it's going. Let's see, what else can we do with this thing? Planeswalker, sure, you can do it if you have a Chandra and your opponent takes 4 damage that way too. That's whatever that is. The fact that it usually picks off any sort of Teferis in the opponent's side of the board. It can deal with Narset isn't really seeing any play. Vraska sees very, very little play. But Ashiok might come down. And Ashiok is a pain in the ass. Oko would still survive. Yeah, Oko doesn't die, but Oko's banned, so there we go. Still though, fantastic card. Definitely going to see some play. In Standard and Limited too, obviously. Yeah, 100% love the card. Tectonic Giant. Here's one that's a little bit divided. So we have a 4-mana 3/4. Whenever it attacks or becomes a target of a spell an opponent controls, choose one. Either deal 3 damage to each opponent, or exile the top 2 cards of your library. You pick one of them, put it into your hand. Oh, no, not put it into your hand, sorry. Exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one. Until the end of your next turn, you may play the card. So not exactly putting it into your hand, but it's kind of like putting it into your hand. So a lot of people are saying that paying 4 mana for a 3/4 isn't really that worth it. I was like, yeah, but what if your opponent removes it and does this? Okay, so if they remove it, they take 3 damage, but they already have Bonecrusher Giant, which is just miles better than this card. It's insane how much value you get from that. But it has the effect where whenever it gets targeted, the owner of the spell, whatever, because it can hit you too, which kind of sucks, takes 2 damage. So 2 damage versus 3 damage is like negligible. So in that sense, this is just better. Bonecrusher is better than this thing. The fact that you can exile some cards is nice, and then find one later and get some card advantage is pretty good. But the fact that it can go every time it attacks, that's just pushing it. You just say, okay, 4 mana, do this, swing in, deal 3 damage to you because I attacked with it. It just has like lightning bolts coming out of his ass. I don't know. That is really where the value is. I don't really think the second ability is going to be played too often. Unless you have nothing in your hand, unless it's the only thing on the board. Then yeah, sure, go ahead, go for it, try to get a card advantage. But otherwise, I actually really do like this card. I seriously like it. I feel like it's... I mean, okay, so 4 mana, deal 3 when your opponent kills it right away is bad. But consider it 4 mana, deal 3, your opponent discards a card. Because they're using a card to remove it. Now we're talking. Now we're actually getting somewhere. This card's a kill spell, no less. Yeah, you know what? I like this card. Despite some controversy, I like it. Obviously, in limited, hell yes, it's amazing. And in standard, I think it's pretty damn good. I'm gonna try it out. I don't know about you. If I open it, if I don't open it, maybe I'll craft it. Who knows? All right, the Akroan War. 4 mana for a saga. Turn 1, or chapter 1, gain control of target creature for as long as it remains on the battlefield. So the fact that you play it, you steal a creature, no limitation on what creature, and it stays on your side of the board for a few turns, that's nice. Doesn't gain haste. I guess that's why it has to stay on the board for a few turns, because it'll be able to attack the following turn. Alright, chapter 2. Until your next turn, creatures your opponent control attack each combat if able. So, like an side effect? I don't exactly know what the effect there is called. I don't know, is referred to as, but geez. Turn 1, you take something. Turn 2, and okay, maybe turn 4, but chapter 1, you take something. Chapter 2, your opponent has to swing out, and that probably means they're going to get some not really good trades. Although if you're playing this, you want to play this in a big red deck, so they run to your big things. You're like, well, I block here, and my giant things are still alive, and you lost a few of your very important creatures. Sorry. Not sorry. And then chapter 3, each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. And it's worth noting that you add the lore counters, after you draw. So untap, upkeep, draw a card, right? So first you untap all your creatures, then this goes off, meaning your creatures should be fine. They should not be affected by this at all. If your opponent has Thassa, it's worth noting that her ability can tap your creature in response to this going off, so they can make some of your creatures kill themselves, potentially. Watch out for that. Otherwise, this is a great card. Are you kidding? I mean, making your opponent attack is fine. Taking their creature is really good. Ideally, what you might want to do is take their creature, your opponent has to attack, and you have their creature block one of the other ones, they kill each other. Right there's a 2-for-1. You use this card to kill 2 of your opponent's creatures, plus some other ones, hopefully. And then at the end of that, they might actually all blow up. I like it. I love it. In limited, I think this card is fantastic. In standard, however, it is a little too slow. It doesn't really do exactly what you want. I mean, for red, taking a creature and not attacking the same turn feels pretty bad. Even in big red, I don't really think it's going to be great. You could sideboard this thing against aggressive decks, but if it's an aggressive deck and they stopped attacking you, you've probably won the game already. Right? I guess you would really want to put this in against combo decks then, because there are a lot of creature combo pieces. They just kind of sit there and do nothing, so you can try to leverage it that way. Mainly, I'm thinking of like Mayhem Devil. But, not Mayhem Devil. Spawn of whatever, the black-red one that deals damage every time you sacrifice a card. Spawn of Mayhem? Spawn of Mayhem. There we go. Found it. Okay. I found it in the old noggin, so that's what it's going to do. Otherwise, limited though, fantastic. Standard, not so much. Alright, another saga. We have the Triumph of Annex. And even though there's a lot of gold in this card, it's uncommon. Which messes with my brain. A lot. Anyway, for 3 mana, get the very, very interesting. So for the first 3 turns, for the first 3 lore counters or whatever, until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +X+0, where X is the number of lore counters on Triumph of Annex. So the first turn it comes down, gets +1+0. Second time, second turn, +2+0. Third, +3+0. Until the end of the turn. And then for the final ability, for the final chapter, target creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So it doesn't have to fight, notably. You don't have to pick something and it's like, well, all my good things are gone, so I guess I lose one more thing now that really sucks. It's optional. The fact that it doesn't keep the buff from the previous turns, or even just from the last turn before, to fight means that you're not necessarily going to trade up very well. It's an aggressive card, but geez, it's not really that good at all. If you're making use of the ability, you're attacking, which means you're probably losing creatures because it doesn't actually buff the toughness at all, so I don't like this at all. In Constructed, obviously 0 out of 5, nothing horrible. In Limited, you might just want to use it if you're already ahead. Sure, it could be like a win more card in the sense that you already have creatures that are doing well, and then you're going to fight later on and remove something, but maybe in that narrow sense. Otherwise, I wouldn't actually mess with it at all. Let's see here. Thrill of Possibility. It's a reprint. Just plain old reprint there. 2 mana, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Fine, great card. Nothing wrong with that. Limited, sure, standard. Yep, we already have this card. We're getting another one. I love it. Roll with it. The fact that you can discard and you have escape in the same set as far as limited goes just makes it a little more utility based, a little more valuable. So yeah, 100%. Run this in. I mean, hell, run 2 or 3 of these if you want to. And limited. In standard, people usually run 2 or 3, maybe even 4, just for whatever effects. Usually it's run in blue-red though, so just knowing that. But yeah, it already exists and it's a great card. Oh, Underworld Breach. This guy. This piece of whatever the hell it is. Alright, so 2 mana enchantment. We gotta go through this one. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. Everything has escape. Everything. Everything. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. At the beginning of your end step, you have to sacrifice this. So it lasts for the turn. And for the turn, everything has escape. Which is crazy. There's going to be some kind of crazy combos to go off with this. I don't know what they are right now, but I swear there's going to be some way to break this card, and I want to find out what it is. It might just be playing Shock a million times. Because it still maintains the escape cost is the same as the CMC. A lot of escape costs are actually higher because you're playing it later on. It's like more value that way. But the fact that it has the same original converted mana cost is incredible. Actually, it's not converted. It's actually the same mana cost. You still have to play the same colors for it. But damn, it's a great card. Oh my goodness. The limiting factor is you have to exile 3 of the cards. This reminds me a lot of... not Kenrith. What's the other one? Keseth? What the hell's his name? I forget exactly, but the one where you play that with Mox Opal and be able to exile some legendary cards and replay legendary cards, and then you'd use it to mill your opponent out in the first turn. Not the first turn, but I think it's a turn 1 kill. So that card, which eludes me at the moment. My goodness. The Hidden Hand. I remember the... what the hell? Whatever the hell it is. Because I know Kenrith is the king, and the other one is the Hidden Hand. But, anywho. It reminds me a lot about that card, which was broken very, very quickly after it came out. So, I feel like this has very, very similar potential. Keep an eye out for it. In Limited, sure, play it. Play it as like your last game. People are comparing this to Yawgmoth's Will, which is worth noting because that card is... oh, God. Yeah, that's a card. So... play this wherever you get it and work on it. There's going to be a standard deck that runs this, I guarantee you, and it's going to do it in the most degenerate way possible. Alright, we have Underworld Fires, a 2-mana sorcery. Deals 1 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, and if something would die that way, just exile it instead. Okay. Not great. If your opponent has a whole lot of Satyr tokens, you can kind of make use of that. Otherwise, we have a similar effect, granted it costs 4. In what, Tectonic Rift, whatever the hell it is? No, there's something that starts with an S, like Seismographic or Sonic, whatever the hell it is. But it makes your opponent's creatures not be able to block instead. And it deals damage to everything, so that's largely better effect, but it costs 4. For 2 mana, yeah, you can use this to pick off things after, like, an unfavorable trade in combat. You know, you have a 3/3 runs to your opponent's 4/4. Oh, and then I use Underworld Fires and kill it. Okay. And sure, you know, your planeswalkers deal damage, get damage too. The fact that it deals damage to everything could be a little concerning, because maybe you don't want to kill your own creatures that way too, so... really not good. It's a very, very under par or subpar. Doesn't really get done what you want it to do, which is what you want is removal, right? So it doesn't really accomplish that. So no, I wouldn't run this in Limited. Standard, obviously, no. We have Underworld Ragehound. Are we close? Oh, we're close. We're close to the end. We have a 2-mana 3/1. Has to attack each combat if able to. And this has a good old exile for 4. Pick another 3 cards. And it comes out with a +1/+1 counter. Yeah, this is great. In Limited, are you kidding? I mean, in Standard, there's better things. But in Limited, yeah, just have a potential, like a 4/2 recurable creature. Even a 3/1 for 2 is pretty good. It has to attack. Sure, it's probably going to die very, very quickly. But the fact that it can just keep coming back for 4 mana, exile 3 of the cards, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a clock you're putting your opponent on. They have to answer this. They have to either exile it later on. I guess it's balanced in the sense that it has to attack each combat, but the fact that it doesn't have haste actually kind of helps it, because it means that you can block with it for a turn, and it probably dies, but it should trade up in that sense. If it doesn't die, then you swing back, and your opponent kind of wasted a turn attacking with a weaker creature, because they want saving it to block here, so it's still pretty good that way. I like it. Yeah. And the last card we have is a 4-mana Wrap in Flames. Deals 1 damage to each of up to 3 target creatures, and they can't block this turn. This is better. This is much better than the silly little Underworld Fires. No. making sure that your things can't block is very, very significant. In standard, this is not going to see any play because we don't really care too much. But in limited, yeah, this could be. You better hope that you win the game that turn. Otherwise, your opponent's like, so you spent 4 mana to deal some damage? Okay, I'm going to spend this mana to put a creature on the board that's going to deal more damage in the long run. We're going to use this turn to play a god because you spent 4 mana doing nothing, really. So that's worth considering, but I think this is definitely playable in limited. Just as like a one-off, though. As soon as you play 2 copies of this thing, you're really grasping at straws here. You're really hoping, unless your deck is like super, super crazy focused, to win on turn 4, or maybe turn 5, then I wouldn't actually mess with it. But one of, I can see it seeing some play. And that, my friends, has brought us back to NX, and that is the end of it. So please, hopefully, you liked what you heard. If you didn't like what you heard, you have some different opinions, feel free to get blinded by my face one more time. Feel free to put an opinion in the comments below. If not, then hey, we're on par. Also, feel free to tune into my stream, twitch.tv/bubblehearthing. I'll be playing some of the new cards, brewing up some decks, who the hell knows. Not right away, because I'm actually going to a couple events soon, so I won't be able to stream at my usual time. But coming up, the next few days, absolutely. So feel free to check it out. There'll be a link down below. And until next time, good night or good morning, depending on what time it is for you. Obviously, for me, the sun is blaring in my face. But as always, good luck.